Welcome to another edition of the eSpot with Camille. The eSpot is your location for the latest in entertainment, beauty, and design from the people who make it. Thanks for joining. Hey, welcome. I am so happy to have you here today and to chat about your journey and everything that you've done, because you've done so much, but it's always nice to kind of start from the beginning. So you grew up in the Netherlands, something we kind of have in common, which is really exciting for me because I don't meet a lot of Dutch people. So really excited about that part. So how did you go from the Netherlands to working here in America?
Yes, I know we do have the twin comment. So I actually was born in Holland, born and raised in a very big family. So I actually was born in Soesterberg, which we spoke about, which you're very familiar with, which is a very small town in Holland. And then afterwards, I actually moved to Diemen, which is also a city outside of Amsterdam. And then I ended up going to high school in Utrecht, which is also a familiar student city. And then from there ended up in New York, in Queens.
Wow. So you started off in Queens. Of course, I think of coming to America when it comes to Queens. I wonder for you, how big of a culture shock? Because for me, like coming from Holland to North Carolina was a huge culture shock. Like initially, I was like, why does everybody sing while they talk? Because I didn't understand the Southern accent. I had never heard it before, except for on TV. And then it was so different too. Like no, people weren't used to me, like a Black person with an accent and so on. So how was it for you? And I mean, New York is a city where there's people speaking different languages everywhere, but how did you find your community there?
So it was a big culture shock. I think coming from Holland, obviously a smaller country, but then at that time I moved from like Nieuwegein, which is a smaller city outside of Utrecht. And then going to Queens, New York is like a world of difference. So I actually moved in with my dad. My dad, lived in Queens for the longest, but it was so different. And I will say that because coming from, a Hindu family, and we would have family over every weekend and, cooking in the kitchen. And, everybody's so social in Holland. You know how it is. Everybody talks to each other. The neighbors know each other. Everybody's so friendly. So then going to New York, right? Going to Queens, like hustle and bustle. People don't know who their neighbors are. I never heard of the concept of like having three jobs, going to college. It took me quite some time to adjust. I will be honest with you because I wasn't used to that. And then also another thing, besides the culture shock, was the food that everybody consumes. Europe, Holland, everything is, I
Small.
will say, smaller portions,
Yeah.
healthier. And then I remember like going to the grocery store for the first time and seeing an actual aisle of like a million different cereals in different colors. And I was completely shocked because that's not how I was raised in Holland. And also we do not have that. I would say equivalent to that is going to Holland in a grocery store and you have a whole aisle full of different cheeses, right? That's what you're used to growing up in Holland.
Good.
Or seafood or different or meats or cold cuts or something like that. So that was a huge culture shock as far as like, yeah, the culture, the food was very different from how I was raised.
Yeah, it's so different still because, like, now that I have a kid, when I was like going through the process of raising her compared to how I was raised, because I wasn't raised here, right? So it was just like, oh, I don't know. There's so many things I didn't know, like, even like, because I've lived here since I was 15, but like, there, like, certain, like, I would hear slang words, but I never really saw them written. So, like, there was a letter her teacher had sent home and it said A dash OK. And I was like, I have looked everywhere for this. I don't know what this is. Da, 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 da. She was like, oh, that means A OK. I mean, saying it out loud, obvious, but I thought it was like a grading thing. And I was like, why does it, it was just like, this is so random. And I was Googling like crazy. And surprisingly, A OK did not. I don't know what it's short for A OK, or I don't know. But it was like stuff like that. But even like when I first moved here, people would say, oh, I live up north. And I would literally be like, how? Like I would look up to the sky, like, how do you live? Because it was even like, I feel like there, everything's more not tactical, but you say what you mean what you say. And here it could be more abstract in a way. So that was even like interesting. Or people would say stuff and I would take it more literal. Like they're like, "Oh, get on the table" or something. I'm like, "Oh, I'm supposed to sit on the table." Like I didn't, it was a lot of weird things like culturally that it took me a while to understand. Like, oh, they don't mean it literally. I don't know if you had any moments like that happened with you too, because it was a lot.
No, I definitely did. And I'm happy that you shared your story because I had something similar in regards to, learning English in school in Europe. You learn the British English. You don't really learn American English and the slang. So essentially, when I started school in Queens, I started speaking, I'm communicating in English, but the British way. So I'm using words such as like rubbish and whatnot that we learned in school. And people are looking at me like, what is she talking about? And then also not understanding the slang, I had to ask people in class, like, what does that mean to like break it down? Because I had no clue. I really had no clue.
Yeah, I remember that being an issue with like driveways and car parks and all that. Like what? Where do you go? Why do you drive on the driveway? That was a lot of. I totally understand because even like addresses and streets and east west, I was like, wait, west is. I was used to being the opposite. Everything, and then the metric system, growing up learning the metric system, then have to go. Anyway, I digress. We're talking about your career, so I'm here. Wait, that's really fascinating, all. But you did all of that learning, I guess, the metric system, and then you majored in finance. So to go from like, not only all the other things with learning a new language, but now also learning a different way that they did math in a way, because you're going from metrics to inches, but also financing wise as well. Was there any, I guess, what was the big difference you noticed even in the education level for you, or the things that you learned or how you learned? Because I felt like when I was abroad, like you mentioned about you learn things the English way, like even spelling. I didn't know I was misspelling words until I got a smartphone because I put U's in everything, favorite, color, like all labor. Still, sometimes I catch myself now because I'm like, oh, yeah, whoops. When I was helping my kid with their spelling test, I was like, yeah, I'm not the one. I'll get somebody else with that. So I wonder for you, like, how was it studying finance and economics, both in New York and Miami?
It was a transition. Like I always felt like I was, a good student in high school. Economics was one of my favorite topics in school, but then going and studying in English was very hard for me. It was a transition. And also because I didn't really feel like there was a lot of support because, I was kind of like branching out on my own and my dad was like, you'll figure it out. And I'm like, I guess I'll figure it out. So that was very hard for me to like make that transition, like understanding everything in English, I guess American English. So yeah, I studied finance and then economics in Miami, but that wasn't really my main dream actually. When I came to New York, we're hanging out with family and, getting to know New York City. And that's when I planted this seed in my head that I really wanted to get into modeling. That's something I really wanted to do. My mom was still in Holland and my dad was like, there's no way, like a typical Hindu Indian Desi dad. There's no way. You need to get your education first. Your beauty is going to fade one day. You need to have something to fall back on, which he's right. And I'm very grateful that he did give that advice. At that time, you're coming from Holland, you're going to New York, you see that everything is possible. And then you're like, you know what? That's what I want to do. I want to at least try it out. So
Oh no, America has the best marketing team in the world because coming like looking at America from abroad view, you felt like everything was possible. Everywhere was like Hollywood or New York. Like you just walk down the street and you get recognized or you get found and you could that the world was endless, it was a melting pot of opportunities. So yeah, that's interesting that you went from modeling to economics, but you still kind of got into the entertainment industry a little bit. Can you share a little bit about that?
yeah, so I think that started because, you're a student in New York. I was living with my dad at the time and, you got to make some money, right? I have tuition. I have to do whatever I need to do. And what I started doing is like working for restaurants. I became a hostess, reservationist. I became one of those people that I saw arriving in New York that had 3 jobs, right? So I'm like a reservationist, hostess, started in restaurants and then it became more in nightlife. And then that's where I started meeting a lot of people, right? You meet a lot of like club promoters, you meet entertainers. And it's very interesting because a lot of the folks that I met at that time, I still have a relationship with, like after all that time, like those were like really strong connections that I made in New York. So That was awesome. But that's how I was exposed to like that part of the life. And it was again like very different coming from Holland. Like now everything is like at arm's reach, right? You are accessible to that person and that person is in a, you know what I mean? It was so new, so new.
No, that's fascinating because you went like to go from economics, also the entertainment industry, working in like the most masculine like opportunities, I feel like too. So what was that like for you, like as a woman in those industries, economics, finance, as well as party promoting? Because my stepbrother, half brother, I don't know, we don't do all that. You know, I'm sure maybe it's the same with Indian community. You don't break it down. You're just like,
No, it
there's
doesn't need
these
to.
siblings, you know, like you're just family, whatever. He was a party promoter when we lived in LA, and it was so like I loved his job for him because I got to skip some of the lines. Some I'm curious for you though. That had to be a little bit more difficult as a woman. Like, how did you handle all that? Was there like pay discrepancies? Like, how did you deal with all of that?
Well, thank God it was when I was much younger. And it was also not a very like long lasting, duration as far as like me being on the scene because it's, when you think of the industry versus actually witnessing things and being in it are like night and day, right? It's not what you expect it to be. And I noticed really quickly that, I made the right decision not being in that industry. Just, I guess, why my path actually changed and I didn't get into modeling, which is maybe a good thing for me because it just wasn't for me. There's a lot of things that happen in that industry that you have to stand up for yourself, I think, as a woman, for sure. However, that could also mean that doors are going to get closed on you, right? And it almost comes down to like how bad do you want to reach your goal in a particular situation. So it was very short lived, which I'm happy about. However, the industry I'm in now, which I've been in for a while in the logistics space, is also very male dominated and masculine, which I'm happy that I entered at the later stage of my life to be able to maneuver in that space, which is very interesting in itself.
How did you get into logistics after the other things that you were doing?
Well, I was, after I got my degree in economics, I, started, being in industry, meaning as far as like getting jobs in a financial sector. And I think I realized at an early age that I just don't like working for people, right? I just don't like having a boss. But also, do I really like being in a finance, accounting, economic space? Because my personality, I'm a Libra, right? So we flow, we like to talk to people. That's just how we, enjoy making connections and network. And that was not it for me. So I left the corporate world. I knew I wanted to do something in logistics. I just didn't know how to get there because that's not something I studied, right? At all. And we actually made, and when I'm talking about we, it was like me and my cousin, VJ, we were talking about this. I was playing around with the idea. I was like, hey, I really want to get into logistics. He said, yeah, that's a really good industry. How do we get into it? Well, YouTube, researching, talking to people. Thankfully, I was living next to a neighbor and he's Colombian and he does a lot of like import and export to Colombia. And, he was guiding us through the process. And it was really a situation where we just kind of jumped into it. And I'm like, okay, we're going to learn as we go. And we learned a lot because at the beginning, there was all these terminologies that were thrown at us like, well, we want things in CIF and we want things in FOB and we want, all these terms, metric tons. Like I wasn't even thinking about metric tons because we calculate everything in tons. That you're like, okay, whoa, what are we doing? You don't have no idea. How are we going to move forward? Right? Because it's like, we don't even know the basic essentials of these things. But I think, a lot of research, talking to a lot of people. And I think I'm a firm believer, like you have to ask the questions, like, ask somebody that has been in the industry for a very long time or just ask as many questions because I think that's how you're really going to learn.
No, I agree with that. Now, how did you go from logistics to ArtPad? What made you make that leap?
It started actually at the same time. And so obviously the logistics company that we have is a for-profit company and ArtPad is nonprofit. And we created ArtPad during the pandemic, actually. one of my friends, Jonathan, we were talking and, discussing how him and his family are doing. And he was just mentioning to me how his grandmother, who has dementia, is so severely impacted during the pandemic because all the social activities and any activity, any socializing was affected, right? And of course, it affects us, right? In our age group, I can imagine how it affects seniors that are already isolated as it is. And then within that category, we have seniors that have pre-existing conditions. So we wanted to do something in the community that supports the mental health aspect, which I love. And everybody that knows me personally knows that I love the seniors. Like my grandfather just became like 101, and I've always been surrounded by the seniors. So taking care of my grandmother when she stayed with us. So I have a, soft spot for them, but I also believe that it shouldn't be a category that's forgotten. And there should be a lot more activities in the mental health space. Like arts and crafts is fun and other things that they can do, but this really helps them dealing with, grief or any other unresolved issues that they may have. And once they do participate in art therapy classes, those floodgates open, right? You have no idea when you open up those emotional windows what may come out. So,
now that makes so much sense because I feel like during the pandemic, a lot of us felt a lot of grief, a lot of isolation. We kind of got to see what it felt like to be kind of what the position a lot of seniors are in when they are not have a lot of opportunities accessible to them, whether it's not accessible because of the stairs or the location, not having enough parking that's close to, or, just the simplest of things. But even when they've lost so many friends and families like back to back to back, we were going through that as well, no matter what age you were with COVID during the pandemic. Well, for those who actually lost people or knew people that lost people. And it's come to even hit home a little bit for myself because I've noticed with some of my family members that are still kind of isolating because they saw so many family members lose their life, whether it was to COVID or other things that just happened to happen around the same time, that now they feel their own like ticking talk. Like things are, like, oh, well, there's one more, it's me next, like it kind of scares me sometimes, even when I call them and they're like, well, another day above ground. And I'm like, and so when you mentioned your grandfather is 101, I'm like, okay, wait, I need some advice because some of these people are like looking at their age, like, oh, it's only a matter of time now and I can't take it with me. And I'm like, stop sending me stuff like you're getting ready for a fire sale because you may have 20 more years in you. So tell me how there's any advice your grandfather has given you about longevity, but also like, I guess getting that second wind of life of realizing you may be in your senior years, so to speak, as far as like high school goes, freshman, sophomore, like your senior year, but hey, have fun with it still. Like it doesn't necessarily mean it's a death sentence.
yes, I spent about 6 weeks with him towards end of last year, and I felt so fortunate, to go to Pilates, and then after Pilates, go have coffee with him. I love that he's very clear.
I thought he was going with you to Pilates.
He's not. He's fit, but he isn't not that fit. But he's a very grateful person, and it just goes back to like, karma and being grateful, doing good for others, and will come back to you. Everything that he says, like for example, we would have coffee or somebody calls him, he's always like thanking God for that. He's very clear, and of course he has like here around, like he has nurses and whatnot. But he's just such a grateful, calm, peaceful person. He takes his meds, he eats healthy. And then at night, he gets his shot. I don't remember if it's Remy, Courvoisier, whatnot. It's still part of life. He's not one of those people that's on a very strict diet. If he wants to eat, chicken, if he wants to eat fries, he gets it. So,
I mean, at that age, you kind of earn to eat whatever you want if you want it. I mean, I don't drink, but hey, maybe in my hundreds I will.
Exactly. As long as it makes you happy. And I think being grateful is one of the, keys to success for sure. And I think definitely in this climate that we're living in, that we have to be kind to one another and just be very grateful. We just have to be very appreciative.
No, 100% agree. Because I'm grateful that you have this program, especially since it's geared towards not only the elders, but also for veterans. Talk a little bit about how it helps with veterans with PTSD with the art pad.
Sure. So we have three categories. So we cater to the seniors that are typically from 70 to 90. We have the veterans, which is our smallest group. And then we also have the children, right? And we also do our summer program, by the way, in the summer in Miami as an after school program, which has been very great for them. And then in regards to the veterans, so that's our smallest group because we have noticed that even partnering up with different groups that not everybody wants to come forward and participate right away. We always try to put our best effort to not label it as mental health therapy, but as art therapy. So as the class progresses, the therapist will, mention certain things that might either be a trigger to a past experience in which they can then get the support that they need. So unfortunately, that's a category that we want to expand on so much because we do believe that a lot of the veterans that have the PTSD can have a lot of support in this space because we have so many therapists. Art really, unlocks so many emotions that they have not walked through. So that's something we want to expand on a little bit more, but we have thus far seen great results.
No, that's amazing because my mom, she's an abstract artist. Kind of see from that.
Yes, these are beautiful. But we're
Oh, yeah. Very, I mean, the earrings, all of it. Mommy. OliviaGateway.com. But one thing that when I was younger, I didn't understand when people would say, oh, what does this artwork mean? They would ask her, what is this? What is that? And she's like, well, it is whatever you see in it because it depends on what it means to you and what you get from it. And I feel like a lot of times with art therapy, people learn to like see things, like they might express themselves in a way they wouldn't normally with words, where they can color certain things and say certain things. And I love that you're doing that because I never would have thought of art as therapy. But I mean, obviously growing up with an artist, we were always doing very crafty, artsy things, or she was taking me to museums, like exposing me to a lot of things. And I did a lot of that with my daughter as well. And it's just something where we would be just laying down, coloring with your kid. Next thing you know, all these conversations just come up. And how do you feel about this? And and I think that's so great that you're opening these opportunities for people to not only get to express themselves in a world that makes it very hard sometimes for you to express yourself. Well, maybe not for me. People might need to stop expressing so much, but especially with AI, I digress. But I love that you're doing that, giving these people opportunities to find other ways, especially with so many things getting cut in the arts and so on. So how can we go about helping support? Because you said it's a nonprofit. Can you share a little bit about that as well?
Absolutely. So at the moment, we are private funded, like we get a lot of donations. And also, if we are targeting a specific, for example, an assisted living facility or retirement home, sometimes they do have a budget and they want us to do the programming. If we are, catering the program into a specific area of the city on, a county level or city level, we might get support in regards to that as well. Like the mayor might, stand behind our program, like, okay, we want this in this area, it would be good for the community or, underserved communities. That's the main category that we're targeting, a lot of areas where we need the program and there's no such thing as a mental health support. So yes, if you would love to donate, for sure, if you want to spread the word, that'd be great because this program is definitely needed for the youth and for the seniors, for the veterans. Again, we've seen like colors, art has so many ways, right? So I want to give you an example of two things. So we had a session of a group of seniors from 70 to 92 at a retirement home. And we asked each senior to pick a piece of paper and there were different colors, right? And then every color also signifies an emotion, right? If it's a color red and you're very passionate or you might be angry. So really intuitively, you already are picking how you feel, but you're not necessarily expressive. You're not expressive in words, right? Not verbally, but you're already like making that connection. So everybody picked a piece of paper, picked a pencil. And then at the end of the class, the seniors can either share how they feel or they can keep it to themselves, right? We don't want to put anybody on the spot. So we had one particular senior, she had a red piece of paper and she wrote on it very big with a black pencil, disappointed. And she shared it with everybody in the class. So we asked her if she wanted to share why that was. And she said, I'm very disappointed in my family because they put her in this retirement home and they only come to see her once a 6 months. So she's lonely, she's isolated. We also know there's a big percentage of seniors that unfortunately pass away due to heartbreak. They're isolated, they have nobody to socialize with and no family members, and they just stay within their room. So that was a perfect example of you think you're just coming into an art therapy class, but then so much comes out of individuals. And it is a beautiful thing. It's therapeutic because from there on out, we can, guide them through the process.
No, I'm sorry. I'm getting emotional just thinking about my own dad and stuff and just like how far he feels from me, even though I see him. I don't could even see him every 6 months because of distance, and he's kind of scared. Not scared. That sounds bad, but he's older and he's like, I don't want you traveling and possibly risk me for COVID and this, that, and the other. So, but as things are getting better, hopefully we'll make it out more frequently. But that's got to be tough for anyone that lives here and their families live abroad. And you were like even sharing how your mom still lives in Holland. So sorry, I got emotional, girl. What?
No, it's fine. No, I wanted to tell you the second story, but I'm a little, ignore me. I want to share these experiences to express and, how important it is. So another session that we did was a bigger group of seniors at an assisted home living facility, about 40 seniors in the Hispanic community. And we did a flower bouquet making class, right? Which is always fun. You think you're just coming into, a fun exercise, but there's always a hidden agenda. We have to pull it out of them. So the assignment was to create a bouquet, and then in the stem of where you could put the flowers is a piece of paper. And in that piece of paper, I want you to write a message of somebody that was very impactful in your life that you would like to relay a message to, either alive or deceased. We end the session. Again, there's a few people that want to share and a few people that don't. Now, there was one lady that really touched my heart. And she stood up and she wrote from the piece of paper that she wants to dedicate this bouquet to her son that is no longer here, that unfortunately passed away 3 years ago due to suicide. So again, you think one thing, but when you open up those floodgates, you don't know what's going to come out as far as emotions. So that's why we started to think like, okay, well, we see a lot of unresolved grief within the seniors, and it would be really great if we partnered up with like a bereavement center or bereavement counselor, which we did, to cater to the seniors, because it seems like they have not gone through all the steps of grief and they really need to go through it all. So it's just going to stay bottled in. So
no, I feel like that's important information because unfortunately that's becoming an epidemic, right? Because so many kids are most common reasons that kids are dying is guns, whether it's by accident or on purpose. And then of course we have the the epidemic of drugs and so on, and like having Narcan being accessible at schools and places that young people are at, or even elderly, not elderly, but people who still think they can party, especially not with today's drugs. And so I'm really glad that you brought that up, because a lot of people I feel like are walking around with broken pieces inside of each other and not realizing that just because you're older doesn't necessarily mean that time has healed those broken pieces. It just means they've just been there festering longer. And so being able to help glue those pieces as best as they can back together, because once you smash a glass, it's kind of hard to put it back together once it's shattered. But I do believe that this could be the way to help in so many ways for our elderly to be, because I don't know about for you, but for me, I'm in that sandwich generation where I'm still taking care of my own kids, but I also have my parents to think about. But luckily they're still like very active, but a lot of my friends have been going through it. So of course it runs through my mind some. But then now that you've kind of cheered me up at the idea that it could be 100.
Yeah, 101.
People.
It's about to be 102 this year. So yeah.
I got 20 more years then. Because I told him, dude, you're going to outlive like you're probably outlived the roaches. Like you're indestructible. You've been eating like a pescatarian since the 60s before it even became cool. You've always worked out, different things of that nature. But I think it's important for all of us. Like, of course, like the GLP-1s has changed a lot of people to get healthier. But as long as your mind's not healthy, it doesn't really matter about the physical. And so I'm glad that you're bringing that element to a lot of different people, because I think the elderly, the veterans, all of them are groups that we kind of look over. And even with the children, so many were isolated during their peak times that they were learning to like build community and communicate. And so having something that focus on those different pockets of people is just amazing. I'm so grateful that our paths were crossed so we could talk about this and share for others to know that there's these opportunities. Because it wasn't that long ago, my mom and I went to a Duke Cancer event where they were explaining like a lot of women, even after they've gone through menopause or whatever, they think they don't have to go to a gynecologist anymore to get their pap smears. And there was a lady who had shared that her grandmother hadn't gone for like 20 years and she had cancer and died like within 3 weeks. So it's a matter of like just opening up those communications, making sure that they're getting all their tests done. They're going to not only just check their physical, but also their mental, because that can make such a big, I didn't realize about the heartbreak, but I mean, it makes so much sense, right? So anyway, we're going to lighten this up a little, like literally lighten this up, because girl, it's Friday over here, even though this is not Friday. We're recording it on a Friday and I'm going to a comedy show later. So all this crying is definitely going to have to end. Unless it's happy tears, which some of it was. So we're going to do a lightning round of fast, fun, and quick questions. So coffee or tea?
Okay. Coffee.
Okay. Morning routine or night owl energy?
Morning routine.
I'm so jealous. Okay. One word you would use to describe your leadership style?
Oh, that's a tough one. Okay. I would say go getter. I don't take no for an answer.
Okay. She's like, I don't even do one word answers. No, I'm kidding. Creative outlet you turn to just for yourself?
Poetry.
Poetry. Who's one of your favorite poets?
Oh, that's, you know what?
No pressure.
There's a local artist in Miami that that has helped me in my journey with poetry that I love. And so it's not a famous person, but impactful.
That's all that matters. A book or quote that deeply influenced you?
Very simple, but to never give up.
That's a good one. The best advice you've ever received?
Best advice I've ever received. It's two things actually, not to take things personal, which ties into the second one, to not involve your emotions into business.
I'm so bad at that. I'm always like, oh, they don't like me. That's why they don't want to pay me the amount I deserve. For that, I can't work for them because they don't like me. No, I'm kidding. Not that, I'm just kidding. One thing people would be surprised to learn about you.
You know, from the beginning of our conversation, I think a lot of people don't even know I speak Dutch. I was actually speaking to one of my girlfriends earlier today, and she had no idea. She heard from a friend. She's like, well, I heard you were born in Holland. Do you speak Dutch? I'm like, yes, that's my main language. I think a lot of people don't even know that. So that I'm from Holland and I speak Dutch.
Well, you don't really have an accent either, or dialect, which I'm kind of surprised of. Did you like have help with that, or just?
No, I think it's from being in the United States for so long, but I speak Dutch every day. Like I speak to my mom, I speak to my aunt. Another thing is I have a million family members, which I think is very traditional in, our kind of communities, right? Like the Hindu family, huge. And we're all so close and connected. Like my first cousins, my aunts, we FaceTime all the time. But yeah, I speak Dutch every single day. That's the main language I speak to my family.
No, I had to go through a speech pathologist to get rid of my accent, but it was more German, so maybe it's a little strong.
German is very strong for sure.
Yeah, because when I used to drink, I could do it if I got drunk enough and was thinking about it. But now it's like I mean, I still speak in broken English. Like if people paid attention, I speak in broken English. It's just I don't have an accent when I do it
at all.
I still still have to think of the words. I still get words confused. It's still all of it. I don't, and I've been here longer than you, I think, because you said, how old were you
Yes.
when you moved?
So I have been here in the country now for like 20 years.
But like, how old were you when you moved here?
I moved when I was 16.
Oh, well, 15, 16. I guess.
Yeah.
As I said, like, usually if you move somewhere like before 11, then you might not have, you might lose your accent or whatever. I don't know. Because I meet people who lived here longer than me, have lived here before me. And it's just, I guess it depends on whether or not it was encouraged for you to keep it or not, too. Because that was the other thing. Like, I was told by my ESL teacher, if I wanted to be American, only speak English. And I was like, so at home, I only spoke English. My mom would try to speak to me in different language, and I would answer her in English all the time because I wanted to be American. I wanted to be on TV. I wanted to do all that. And I was in the first real movie I did with lines. They dubbed over me.
No way. We're, oh my God. When was this and why? Because the accent.
I was supposed to be a New Yorker, I guess. And so I was just like talking like myself, but I probably had like a weird German California hybrid accent because I was going through my Hillary stage from watching Fresh Prince of Bel Air all the time. So
Right.
it was probably like I thought I sounded very American. And after that, the next film I worked on, I went like he was a character on the movie, and he worked with me every day. So he was a speech pathologist. He was actually a vocal coach. He actually worked with Nicki Minaj. Not that I'm saying anything related to Nicki Minaj. God, that I'm gonna have to edit that part out. But needless to say, that's so sad because there's like a video clip of her like working with him. I think they didn't get along, so he loved me. So on that point,
Listen to me, don't judge.
So
So
he taught at Juilliard, and so he like would work with me every day on set because he knew I wanted to be an actor and sing and stuff, which the singing never took on. But he worked with me every day to get rid of it, and that's how I got rid of it. But yeah, interesting. So moving on, what is your definition of beauty right now? That's the last.
beauty, I would say for me, it's all about inner beauty. Yeah, I think inner beauty is what will reflect on the outside. So self-worth, are you in tune with yourself, spirituality, doing your shadow work, working on your flaws. I've done so much work on myself over the last couple of years, and that's how I see people now. Not just this, but like, how are you as a person? Like, what is your character? Do you give back? I think that's one of the main things that I would love to see more from people, to give back. I think that's so important. It's so good for your soul because that's the ROI when people are looking at it like, okay, what do I get back? It's good for you pouring into your soul.
100% agree. Well, this has been such a delight connecting with you. Share again where everybody can keep up with you and learn more about the Art Pad as well as your other business. I'm like scrolling back up to find the name again. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I lost it.
So if everybody wants to have more news and updates how we're expanding our nonprofit, it is on www.art-pad.org. You could follow us on Instagram, and then my personal Instagram if you want to see what I'm up to, what I'm involved in, which is like a lot of things. It's Rekha Kanhai on Instagram.
All right. Again, this is Rekha, wonderful guest with us today. Thank you so much for joining me on the eSpot, your story, your heart, your community, the way you creatively shared your story and all the healing aspects. I absolutely loved it. Thank you so much for being a guest. And everyone out there, make sure you share this episode with your friends and your family and like your frenemies and your enemies and your ops, whoever. Like everybody needs a little eSpot in their life, right?
Absolutely. This was such a pleasure. I'm so honored to be on this platform. You're just you're a light. So I think you being a light, you attract a lot of light. So it's such a blessing.
Lessons online. Thank you again. And make sure you guys keep tuning in to the eSpot with Camille. This is season 10, you guys. So thank you again for all of your support. I really appreciate it. This is an independent podcast. So anyone that you can send my direction that would also be a great guest, please do just send an email to press@camillecoward.com. Again, thanks for tuning in. Y'all come back here. I don't know why I say that. I'm so not.
She had to get out her mama house. Daddy be tripping, now she be whipping. Ain't no more.